Hey everybody, Questwise here, and in this video we're going to start a new series where I'm going to explore the Codex series of books for Castles and Crusades. Today we're going to start with Codex Germania. These are written by Brian Young, who I really emulate to be like Brian. He has an amazing way of researching mythology and folklore and history of different nations and putting them into gameable format that just is beautifully done. The other thing that's really super great, especially about Castles and Crusades in general, but the Codex series itself, is the art director, Peter Bradley, and his crew of artists, notably Jason Walton in the Codex Germania. Just really, I mean, this cover art, come on, right? It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's very captivating. And so we're going to do a series of videos here on the channel discussing each of the different codexes that are currently out. And then from speaking with the author himself, found out there are a few more in the works as well too. Codex Germania, we're going to start with that today. I've used this book quite extensively. Had a campaign that I ran that was based on German folklore and mythology. But I also mixed in a few other things. I mixed in a bit of Roman mythology and some darker themes and such. There's a few videos back on the catalog where I talk about some of those game sessions as well too. But I picked this up. This is the very first codex of that series that I actually owned. And mostly because my entire family originates from Germany. So I was really drawn to that, and Mr. Young has done some amazing research into the history of the peoples as well as the mythology. Now, this book a little bit can be used almost in conjunction. They have another codex in the series called Codex, I think it's Nordica, which blends the mythologies of, or which exemplifies the mythologies of the Norse myth and the folklore behind that. The Codex Germania, the Germanic peoples and the Nordic peoples, there's a lot of sharing details. The names of the gods, the belief in certain stories and certain creatures. A lot of blending there. I would almost recommend that you run both of them together. I did for the most part during our small campaign, was that I sort of blended the different mythologies together and to create a much richer type world. And it was set in a world that kind of emulated ancient Earth, but at the same time was vastly different. There was lots of magic involved and some different... and I'll go into that in this video too about the book and how the magic of the ancient German heroic age kind of works. This not only applies to the Codex Germania, but to the entire Codex series of all the books that are currently out right there. These are wonderfully researched and amazingly well written. The format is set up in such a way that it feels very logical in the flow of it, while giving you tons of information, but also makes the gameable aspects of it very evident and usable. So not just the Codex Germania, but the entire Codex series is really well done. There's a history of the German-speaking peoples in this. There is a history of their mythology. There's also a section on Germanic beasts and monsters, including the Eoten, which are a form of giants. The Hob, which is a fey-like creature that will bond to a human and dedicate its life to protecting and serving that human. Krampus, of course, we all know Krampus. And there's a section on the complexities of the Germanic dragon. So if you don't know what I mean by the German heroic period, think of things like, and again, it's blurry, but think of Beowulf. Beowulf would be a great example of that. It's a Germanic. The languages are very similar. It's written in Old English. That's where all those sort of languages between Norse languages and Germanic languages all sort of split. there's a sort of melting pot in Europe at that time where the Germanic people sort of spread everywhere. So, but think of the story of Beowulf and the complexities of the story of Grendel, fighting Grendel, and becoming hero of the Geats, and the story that continues on with him older, Beowulf as king, and then having to defeat this dragon. The Germanic peoples had a very dense, very complex view of what a dragon was. And this goes into lots of details about that, but it also allows you enough freedom to sort of create your own version of a Germanic dragon as well, too. There are a couple of new classes. There's the Dark Witches, which are like, witches that speak with the dead, that dwell on more dark rituals. There are Rune Masters, and there's a whole section in here on runic secrets as well, too, which really adds a new layer to a level of magic in a game like this. And this is one of my, we've talked about this before, but one of my favorite things is when fantasy role-playing games draw from history and folklore and mythology and make those things gameable, to create a storytelling environment that utilizes them. I talked about this before, where the second edition players, second AD&D second edition player's handbook had those little blue call-out boxes, and would talk about famous historical people. And it really drove me to go study history and to go and read as many books as I could on those different peoples. I feel like Castles and Crusades, that's their modus operandi, right? That they, while they have some world settings that are completely fantasy, I feel like there's a lot of inspiration drawn from classical mythologies, as well as medieval mythologies, as well as the heroic age of man kind of mythologies and stuff as well. And I love that. That's what really draws me to Castles and Crusades, as well, that it is a fantasy world that does draw a lot of inspiration from this series, which we're going to take a look at throughout the rest of these videos that we do. There's a section on religious rituals, including the weird, which is your fate, your destiny. There's ring oaths. Again, that's going to blur in with the Norse mythology as well, too. There's a section on gods and goddesses and how they're worshipped. The final part of this book, there's two parts. There's an adventure, which really sets the tone for the Germanic heroic era. But there's a section on the way of the warrior, which talks about what it was to be a warrior during the time period that it's focusing on, this sort of Dark Ages, type era. And it does it in such a way that it gives you a good idea about like the importance of being a warrior, as well as the sort of destiny behind it, and the idea of not having, casting fear aside to face the unknown. Is really, really great way of sort of getting an idea of what it was like, much like the honor of a samurai kind of thing. The Germanic people had a very, very special view of what warriors were meant to be. And it was very idyllic. Like I feel like there was a lot of honor involved and a lot of personal glory involved in that type of way of lifestyle as well, too. And that heroic storytelling, mythological folklore, what it was to be a warrior. So that covers that in that book as well, too. So just a brief look at Codex Germania. We're going to do, like I said, this will be a continuing series. Next time we're going to look at Codex Classicum, which covers things like classical Greece, Etruscans, early Rome. So we're going to go back even further to classical Codex Classicum as well. I hope this series entices you to pick these things up. They can be found on DriveThruRpg. I'll put a link down below as to where you can find them as well. You can also buy them directly from Trollord Games as well, and I'll put a link to their website there too. Until next time, I'm Questwise. Stay safe, my friends, and game on.